There is no spying on Americans. We don't have a domestic spying program. What we do have are some mechanisms where we can track a phone number or an email address.
President Obama last night with Jay Leno taking a really serious approach to all of this. In a continuing debate within political circles and the country at large, I think, about how Edward Snowden in Russia should be considered. Is he someone who delivered a lot of information to the public we wouldn't have otherwise known about how information is gathered, potentially about us? So is he kind of a hero, or is he a traitor? A lot of people have weighed in on this. There's this particular way of becoming a whistleblower, and in matters of national security and when it comes to classified information, technically you're not a whistleblower. You're not protected after having revealed secret information by claiming you're a whistleblower. That's not how the Federal Whistleblower Protection Act, that's not how it goes. But we're going to talk about it with Congressman Justin Amash, Republican from Michigan. He's chairman of the House Liberty Caucus, and he has grave concerns about how the NSA operates, especially against innocent Americans. He joins us now. Congressman, great to talk to you, sir. How are you?
Thanks, Laura. Great to be on here.
So you heard the president. He went on a very serious forum last night to discuss this issue. Your reaction to what he said?
Well, I think he misled people when he said they can track a phone number or email connected to a terrorist attack.
Terrorist threat. He said terrorist threat.
Yeah, terrorist threat. They're tracking, collecting information on every single American in the United States. So regardless of your connection to any sort of terrorist threat, the government has a database, and it's gathering everyone's phone call information. That's who you're calling, what time you're calling, and all sorts of information about what device you're using and other identifying information, even if it's not your name.
The former Attorney General, Mike Mukasey, came on the show a couple days ago, and he was adamant that the way people like you are describing this program is irresponsible. He used the term irresponsible, inaccurate, and misrepresenting the situation. That you do not have a reasonable expectation of privacy regarding duration of phone calls related to the number that you use. Phone companies keep records for some period of time, and that is all the information that the government has access to. Doesn't even have your name. It only has your phone number, and that number only becomes triggers more action after the government goes to the FISA court, if indeed there's reason to receive a warrant to then further delve into that for more information, perhaps content monitoring, and so forth. What's your reaction to that comment?
Well, first of all, that's a misrepresentation of how it works.
Well, he's a former Attorney General. He knows a little bit about how it works, I think, but go ahead.
I go to the briefings, and I think I have the information about how it works.
So how do you disagree with his point here?
How do I disagree with his point? Well, first of all, he says there's no expectation of privacy, which is a ridiculous statement. I represent real people. He acts as though there's some objective standard that he, as a former Attorney General or a former administration official, I hear this all the time from bureaucrats. They think they can tell the American public what they have an expectation of privacy in. And I will tell you, I go to my town halls and meetings, and people expect that their phone calls are kept private. Who they're calling is a private matter. It's not for the government to decipher. And when they tell you that they're not collecting content, even if that's true in this case, the legal theory they're operating under allows them to collect content. That's just a policy decision that they're making, not to collect content. And in fact, with emails, we know this for a fact, even though there's no bulk email collection program, according to what the NSA has told us, they can go after emails that are 6 months old and get your content without a warrant. That's how the whole Petraeus issue came down. They can go after emails that are more than 6 months old, and grab your content. Anyone.
Well, that's only after they go to the FISA court.
Yeah, that's true, but without a warrant.
No. I don't believe that. I'm going to ask. I'm going to
on email. Yes, email content that is more than 6 months old.
Okay, email content that's more than 6 months old. You say that is stored by the whatever the email providers are. You could be Yahoo or Google or AOL or whatever. If it's more than 6 months old, you're saying the government can read it, keep it, store it, and use it against innocent Americans without having received or gotten any warrant from the FISA court. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, they can obtain it without a warrant. Yes.
Okay, that's new to me. I don't know that.
That's why there's legislation. That's why there's legislation right now going through the House and Senate on this issue. Patrick Leahy has been running legislation through the Judiciary Committee. It's being held up on this very issue. And my friend Kevin Yoder from Kansas has legislation on this issue. So this is, it's a separate program from this.
Yeah, it's not the NSA.
Collection.
So what is that running? What is that program running out of? Because I want to keep the issues separate. So that's because, but sure. I'm right. It's not part of what the NSA is doing. It's part of what?
It's a government it's a general government program. So
okay.
It could be used by local law enforcement. It could be used by anyone.
FBI,
but the bottom
ATF.
Yeah, Sure. The bottom line is what I'm trying to express here is when they tell you that they can't get content, that is a policy-based decision. That's not because they think the Constitution prohibits them from getting your content, and that's important for the American people to recognize. Because when they make it sound like, look, we're not getting content because we'd be prohibited from doing that, that's not true. That's just an internal decision that they're making. So the concern Americans should have here, and they do have this concern, I know because I go to lots of town halls, the concern they should have here is that it expands. It starts as one thing and it spreads to something else. And soon the government is collecting all sorts of information, including possibly your content.
Well, I think the slippery slope is something to be extremely concerned about because we've seen massive abuses. And I was reassured that the NSA's, just sticking on the NSA issue, that they are completely walled off from other agencies. Other agencies wish they could get their data, but they can't. And that HHS or IRS, they're not going to get the data from the NSA. That it's completely separate. It's an intelligence matter. It's a counterterror initiative, and it's not part of the other part of the government's collection efforts. I'm just telling you what's being said. I'm sure you've heard it too.
Yeah, and you saw probably the story the other day about the DEA getting information from the NSA. The bottom line is the way the statutes are written. Any information that is collected by the NSA can be shared with the executive branch, can be shared with other agencies. So even if in certain cases, say they're not targeting the content of Americans, if they inadvertently come upon some content that they think is perhaps related to some criminal matter, they can use that in a criminal investigation. So the question becomes, how often are they, even in the cases where they're not targeting, how often are they coming upon content inadvertently? I've asked this question. We sent a letter to the NSA and FBI on this very issue, and we haven't gotten an answer yet.
Greenwald wrote something about how Glenn Greenwald in The Guardian has written about how members of Congress have been denied access to basic information about the NSA. And he goes through documents, I guess, provided to 2 House members, demonstrate how they're blocked from some meaningful oversight. What's your experience in gaining access to this type of critical information?
Well, that's a great question, and the point is, I think this is another area where the administration and other defenders of these programs have been misleading people. We've received briefings on these items, and I've attended, if not all the briefings, most of the briefings over the past couple of years. And what you find is that they don't volunteer really important information. So you go to a briefing, they'll use a lot of technical terms, and they don't volunteer what the term of art means. So you don't know when they talk about, for example, say something like bulk collection. You don't know what that means. And they don't really get into the details of it. And you're given a brief period of time. You have to ask questions, and there's a queue and all that. The point is, we go to these briefings, and we have to maybe go to 3 or 4 briefings and phrase our question in exactly the right way before they'll give us a straight answer. So actually, one of the interesting things that's happened is I'll go to one briefing, ask a question. I'll get an answer. I'll think about the answer that was given to me, and did I ask the question in the right way? I'll go to the next briefing and refine it a little bit. I'll get another answer. I'll think about that. I'll go back, come back to another briefing, refine the question again. After you've asked the question 3 or 4 times and refined it, you find that the answer is very different from the initial question you asked. And that's because they don't volunteer the information. If you're slightly off, if you use the wrong acronym, if you say, is the NSA doing something, but in fact the government's doing it, not the NSA, they'll tell you no or yes.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, that tension between the executive and the legislative branches, back in the last 2 years in the Reagan administration when I worked in education department and then at the White House, that's always the case. I've got to say, the executive branch never wants to give Congress anything, and Reagan wasn't too thrilled about having to send all his people up there either, but I get your point. Karl Rove said something about you recently, and I'd like you to respond if you don't mind. Let's listen.
National Journal put out its ratings of the most liberal to conservative Republicans. The most liberal Republican is Justin Amash of Michigan. Far more liberal than any other Republican. And why? Because he is a 100% purist libertarian. And if it's not entirely perfect, I'm voting with Nancy Pelosi, which is how he ends up with all these liberal ratings. I'm voting no.
Your reaction?
Well, it's ridiculous on several fronts. First, I vote yes most of the time. I'm one of the most independent members of Congress, but I vote yes most of the time. Second, I vote least often with Nancy Pelosi of any Republican in Congress. I have the least similar voting record to Nancy Pelosi. You can look that up. That's public information.
Well, what's going on with Rove? I mean, what's going on with Rove? I mean, there's this tension. You had Christie say y'all are dangerous. Rove comes out and says you're just a liberal in Republican clothing. Well, and so what's really at the heart of this? You forget the intricacies. What's at the heart of this tension?
Well, I think there's a new strain of republicanism. It's a libertarian side of republicanism. It's not new historically. There's always been this libertarian sort of base in the Republican Party. I think Ronald Reagan actually came out of that. But there's this tension between the Bush Republicans of the last 10 or 20 years and the newer Republicans who are getting elected.
And so Rove is just seeing a rising tide of new leaders, and he and Christie want to stomp down on y'all.
He doesn't like Rand Paul. He doesn't like Ted Cruz. He doesn't like me, and I think that's pretty obvious. Let me also explain how he misleads. There's the liberal label he's getting is from this National Journal ranking, where they rate you as more liberal if you vote less often with leadership. So those who vote least often with leadership are ranked the most liberal in the Republican Party. The ones who are ranked most conservative are actually probably the most liberal Republicans. And the ones who are most conservative are ranked the most liberal.
No, I understand what you're saying.
It's backwards.
I get it. Before we go, we have almost no time. You called Snowden a whistleblower and not a traitor. You do know that the Whistleblower Protection Act does not apply to people who work for the NSA or the CIA or any intelligence services, right? You do know that.
Oh, yes.
So why are you calling him a whistleblower? That just seems a little bit sloppy.
Well, no, the issue is not whether it's technically the term whistleblower. The issue is whether he's more like a whistleblower or a traitor.
No, he's a whistleblower. He would have gone up to you, Justin. If he was a whistleblower, he would have gone to you. He wouldn't have run to Hong Kong and to our adversary, Russia.
Laura, as you know, he can't go to me under the Whistleblower Protection Act. So he can't go to a member of Congress like me. He has to take certain channels. So nobody's saying he didn't break the law. The issue is whether he's more like a whistleblower or a traitor. And there's a specific term, definition of traitor in the Constitution. He doesn't mean
well, and there's a definition of whistleblower. I'm playing around with you here, but there's a definition for both, right? I mean, he goes hanging out with Putin. That's not really a friend of the United States. I mean, I'm kind of glad we have this information, but he did some damage, and we have some information. So there are two things going on. He did damage, and we have some information, which is kind of a good thing.
If he did something damaging to the United States, if he gave up people in the field, that's a different story altogether. Of course.
Hey, we appreciate your joining us, Congressman Justin Amash, on the Laura Ingraham Show. A lot more to get to. Stay with us.
The Laura Ingraham Show.